call this meeting to order. This is the regular board meeting for the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District for Saturday, August 8th. It's 8 a.m. Now, Peter, may we have the roll call, please? Is Peter unmuted?
He is not unmuted. There we go.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Good.
Okay. Rickard?
I hear.
O'Grady?
Here.
Epstein?
Here.
Perot?
Present.
And Dornbrook here.
Thank you. Eric, do you have any announcements?
Well, I'd like to welcome our one and only guest, Supervisor Brown, to our meeting. Hope you enjoy the meeting.
Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming. Thank you for attending. Okay, and of course, everything will be by roll call, any votes because of Zoom. Okay, are there any corrections to the agenda or consent calendar?
I'd like to.
Bertrand, go ahead.
I'd like to propose to change the order for the. Trying to find it's 8 for the snow removal. 8H or what is it?
8H.
Yes. So I think we should discuss the alternative proposed by Eric before we move to rescind.
Before we what?
Move
Oh,
to rescind. So I'd like to discuss first.
Oh, that makes sense. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do H2 before we do H1. Okay.
Thank you.
That's fine. Okay. That's fine. Okay, so we move to comments from the audience. Anyone like to say anything that's not on today's agenda? Talk about?
Well, the only thing, this is Supervisor Brown,
Hi, Jeff.
I'd like to add is we had 2 more deaths in Amador County last night. The persons were in the late 70s. And so I'd like to have a moment of silence for these people.
Definitely sorry to hear that, Jeff. But thank you for letting us know. Okay, anything else from anybody?
Supervisor Brown, were those both at Kit Carson?
Yes, as far as I know.
And for those that don't know, that's the Senior Assisted Living Convalescent Hospital in Jackson.
Okay. Okay, we now move to adoption of the consent calendar. These are items A through D. Approve regular board meeting minutes of July 11th, 2020. Approve the appointment of Frank Pedricelli to the Finance Committee. Approve the consent calendar, the consent for claims, and the review of receivables and shutoffs report. Is there a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
I'll move to adopt the consent calendar.
Okay, that motion was by Standish. Is there a second?
I'll
This is
second it.
Was that Bob seconding?
No,
Yep.
I think I was beaten out.
By Peter?
You can have it, Bob. You can have it.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Bob. So all in favor of adopting the consent calendar, roll call?
Rickard?
Yes.
O'Grady?
Aye.
Epstein?
Aye.
Perot?
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay, thank you. We now move to item 8, items for board action, finances, and we welcome Kelly.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
So we'll start with the balance sheet on page 26 of your packet. I didn't, there's nothing really new to report on the balance sheet except for the change in deferred outflows and deferred inflows from the GASB 68 and GASB 75 entries that were completed in June. So that is the new balances, and you can see under non-current liabilities on page 27 of your packet, the total net OPEB liability, they're at 1.5, which is up from last year at 1.3. Last year was 1.3. But hopefully with changing our healthcare provider, we'll be able to get that down with new rules and such, changing our contract from CalPERS. Any questions on the balance sheet?
If we change, we're no longer subject to OPEB adjustments?
Oh no, we're definitely still subject to it. We're just, our contract that we have currently provides retiree benefits for life. So which causes our OPEB liability to be much higher. With the new contract and new rules, we'll be able to lower that because we can change the way our contract is. It's going to be different than with Aqua than what it is with CalPERS. So,
thank you.
And I should also mention that these June financials, they are not final, obviously, because we don't close June until after the audit is complete. And we are still reconciling some accounts. So there may be some minor changes, but I don't expect anything very big, but just to note that these are not final. And obviously once the audit is complete, then we'll present the final financials for June.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on then to our operating cash by fund. So currently as of June 30th, again, this is with no, I have not completed property tax allocations yet. So this is pre-property tax allocation. Some things to note, both snow removal and solid waste will have interfund loans from electric. Snow removal at a negative of $36,000 and solid waste at a negative of $19,000. So those will be the interfund loans.
Can you explain that a little bit? So I understand that snow removal can't be funded by property taxes. That I understand.
Correct.
I assume solid waste could, or no?
No, because it's still a voluntary service. So if we adopt the mandatory solid waste ordinance, then it becomes an enterprise fund, and then we can use property taxes towards it.
I see. Okay, and then the other wastewater and water, of course, can be funded.
Absolutely.
Property taxes. And then I guess maybe I don't know, at one point you can, or maybe now you can explain our other cash deficits because of capital expenses now need to review cover, or will we have a property tax more cash to replenish funds beyond zero? I guess what I'm wondering is, are we in pretty good shape with property taxes?
Yes.
Or is it going to be consumed by last year's capital expenses?
I mean, we definitely, have property tax revenue to allocate. $225,000 of it has already been allocated to Fund 50, which we did, or to electric, which we did in December to cover tier ratios for calendar year 19.
Right.
So we're going to have about $600,000 to allocate, and most of that, as you can see, is going to go to, well, it's kind of hard to see here for fire and park because they are in one fund with G&A. So that's why that shows a positive 174,000 because of the property tax revenues that we've received already. But in reality, fire and parks will both have property tax revenue allocations. Wastewater and employee housing will both need property tax allocations as well.
And based on the water wastewater rate study that was adopted by the board, we have a commitment to fund those two funds according to the estimated amounts in that rate study as well.
Right. But yeah, I guess okay. I think you've answered my question. The point is that we have some money, some cash to fund those things. That's what I'm.
Yeah, especially without the tier ratios for USDA, we have a lot more play around this year.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
I have a question. So can we use tax allocation to subsidize also the irrigation, or is it something water? I heard per water, but I didn't hear. Since it's kind of voluntary situation, not everyone has an irrigation account. I'm asking, is this something that can be done?
As I said at planning yesterday, I'll be checking with Shanahan on what we can and can't do, and I will continue to do what I said I would do.
Okay.
Okay, moving on then to the combined income statement on page 29 of your packet. Operating revenues year to date are down from plan by $470,000. You can see commercial revenue is down from plan by $503,000. Residential revenue is down from plan by $26,000, but you can see in June alone, they were above plan by $52,000. So you can obviously see that residential revenue is definitely up from what we had planned, and I foresee that going forward.
Can I ask? So, which months were negative for the residential? Since we had a spring where we always exceeding budget, so I'm assuming there are other months that went below budget. And
yes. I don't know those months right off the top of my head, Bertrand. I would have to look back at prior financials to, but we definitely had a couple of months where residential revenue obviously was below plan since we ended the year at $26,000 below plan. So
yeah, which that brings my second part of my thinking here is, so I'm assuming there's a few months that were way below budget because we were way above budget in the spring. So my question is, why is that? Did we make wrong assumption in our budget for last year? I'm surprised we end up at a negative 26K with a spring that was way over our budget. That's basically my point.
well, winter though, we had a very low snow year, and people weren't here during the winter. They didn't start coming until COVID. So.
Correct.
Okay, January, February was low. March and December were good snow. So I'm assuming January and February would be the months where we're under budget. So I'd like to.
Yeah, Bertrand, all the finance packets are available. You can go and look at those month by month if you want to check that out.
Well, let me ask let me make a question. Requires a request. I'd like to see a curve showing how budget compare to actual expenses, so we can see where the months were off. Because I'd like to see it February, January. I'm curious how this budget has been computed. Yeah.
Well, our budget for revenues is an average of 5 years. So they take into account drought years that we've had and big years that we've had. So that's how and that's explained in our budget assumptions. Okay. That, we do an average over 5 years. So it's never going to be exact because we can't predict the weather. So we do an average.
Okay, that's an assumption. I'd like to check the assumption, and if you are not going to do it, I'll do it by myself. But I think it'd be a nice service to see which months are under budget versus which are over budget, and make sure it match our assumption.
I do provide that every month with financial statements.
Yeah, yearly base.
Yeah, you know, the thing is, Bertrand, it's all right there in box in our finance folder. I'm just looking at it right now. So for example, in November.
Okay, I'll go look at it. Okay, I'm not part of the finance. Yeah. Okay.
Just, for example, in November.
You are part of the board and it's reviewed every month. So are you paying attention?
Just a second. I'm just giving Bertrand an example. In November, residential was $56,000 below. And, you know, if we had more staff and we had more time, it'd be nice to make all the graphs and everything. But the information is here.
Okay, and I'll do the graph myself. See, that's the way you want to work.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Kelly.
So year to date, total operating is down from plan by $76,000. And considering how far down from plan we were in revenues, I really think that that's a testament to the fact that, you know, we weren't buying power or propane. So you can see that $318,000 below plan in cost of goods sold. And then also, you know, not spending as much as we could have or plan to in both operating expenses and capital expenses. Any questions on the combined income statement? Okay, moving on to fire department on page 31 of your packet. Total operating for fire is operating at a loss of $102,000 year to date. But we should take into account that operating revenues for fire do include the $65,000 grant that we received, and that went straight to purchasing those SCBAs. So really total operating for fire, when you consider the cash losses, is right around $165,000. Moving on to parks on
Kelly,
page 30.
before you move on, I just wanted to let Bertrand know one thing in answer to his previous question. All the budgeted numbers for every month is in the July 7th packet on page, actually I don't see which page it is, but it's in the assumptions part of the budget. And every month, which is the budget, which is the 5-year average for each month. So those are the budgeted amounts that Kelly is putting into this document. Is that right, Kelly?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to make two comments. First one, I have asked multiple times to receive packet from every committee, and I still do not receive finance personnel. So I don't know what to do to actually get this packet. Yes, I could go to the box, but I'd like the courtesy to be actually receive this packet so I can look at them. Number one. Number two, I think this is part of what I'd like to bring to this board is to make things clearer for people to follow up what's going on. Having a chart that shows how we compare budget versus actual month by month is a very simple way to have a quick grasp of what the situation. So yes, I'm going to dive in, but I don't think my request to do that is out of line. I think that should be what we should strive to do so the public understand the growth line. So I finish with my point.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Kelly.
Moving on to parks on page 32 of your packet. you can see that parks ended year to date at $22,000 under plan, and a total operating loss of $49,000. Moving on to water on page 33. Year to date operating revenues are down from plan by $5,700. Year to date total operating is actually up from plan by $45,000, but still operating at a loss of $89,000. Moving on to wastewater on page 34. Operating revenues for wastewater were up from plan by $2,300. Year to date total operating is actually up from plan by $183,000, but again, still operating at a loss of $138,000. Moving on to electric on page 36. Total operating revenues year to date are down from plan by $363,000. Total operating is down from plan by $60,000. And you can see in the other non-operating income line, that $277,000, that includes the $225,000 that was already allocated property tax in December for calendar year 19 tier ratios. And it also includes our auction proceeds. Moving on to snow removal on page 38 of your packet. Year to date total operating was just slightly up from plan by $1,500. And you can see that obviously with the change in pricing, it definitely helped, because we did finish the year at a positive $12,000 in total operating. Net income was down from plan by $125,000, but that's mainly due to the GASB 68 and GASB 75 expenses, and those are non-cash expenses. So they do affect our P&L, but not our cash position in snow removal. Moving on to propane on page 39. Operating revenues for propane year to date were down from plan by $206,000. You can see though, cost of goods sold, obviously we didn't buy as much propane, so that was down by $169,000. So total operating for propane actually performed better than planned by $23,000, and operating at $127,000 total operating.
Mhm.
Moving on to solid waste on page 40. Operating revenues year to date are up from plan by $33,000, and that's due to the obvious the change in our pricing. And you can see total operating expenses for solid waste are over plan by $67,000. So total operating for solid waste was down from plan by $34,000 and operating at a loss of $43,000.
And Kelly, do you expect that? Yeah, we expect that to be reversed in our budget now, right?
Right, right.
Higher rate, yeah.
Any other questions on income statements?
I would like to commend and thank staff for doing a very good job of operating during this unprecedented time. Being down $500,000 in revenue, we're only down $62,000 in net income on a combined basis. So thank you, Eric, Kelly, Rick, Dave, Joe, and Brandy, and so forth.
I will convey that to staff. Thank you, Standish.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the income statement comparison on page 42. Compared July 19 to this year, July. I'm sorry, it's June. That says July, but this is actually June, comparing June 19 to June 20. I apologize for that. But you can see commercial revenue as compared to last June, we were down $764,000. Residential revenue is comparable to last year, only down $3,200. And total operating, that number is a little bit skewed because of the 225, I'm sorry, the property tax allocations that haven't been completed yet. So you can see that large variance in allocations, but that's just, like I said, because the property tax revenues haven't been totally allocated yet.
I mean, you got to admit that that residential line is pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean, 2 months of poor winter offset by the spring, what's happened in the spring, I guess, is to answer for it, but it's pretty interesting.
And that's all I have on June financials. Was there any questions? Okay, moving on to July revenues. You can see commercial revenues are down from plan by $27,000. Residential revenues are up from plan by $31,000. And again, you know, we base our budget on an average of units sold over a 5-year period. So definitely see that in residential revenue, the amount of people that are deciding to stay here year round now. I know that the Caplesview HOA, all of those units have now been sold, and 5 of the 6 units that are there, people have decided to live year round. So there's definitely, with all the remote working, people are finding that, you know, they don't have to live in the city, and they are definitely purchasing properties in Kirkwood and deciding to stay year round. So. And then also I'd like to point out base rates. You see that there is a large variance there, and that was due to an error in the budget. I multiplied our commercial wastewater base rates by the old EDU number, but since, you know, we've changed it back to where water and wastewater EDUs are the same and there's no more strength factor, I forgot to change that in the budget, in that line on the budget. So there will be a variance in base rates through the year, and that will be noted on our budget variances tracking.
Can you describe, once the correction is made, what's the difference between the actual and the budget?
Well, we don't correct
Okay.
the budget. So it will, yeah.
It would remain, okay. But still, so what, even the budget, official budget is not changed, how do we compare to what the budget should have been?
We're about $12,000 off.
Okay.
It's noted in the budget variances every month, Bertrand, and then you could use those. That's how we track those, how we've done those in the past. For example, when we hired a consultant 2 years ago that wasn't budgeted, we just put that in the budget variance instead of revisiting the whole.
But I think what Bertrand's asking, let's see if we're saying the same thing. So if we actually collected $108,000 and the budget shows 121, the budget was based on the error that Kelly described. If that error had not been made, would we be right for base rates?
Yes.
Yeah,
Base rates is calculated by the number of EDUs that are, you know, put on the base rates, the multipliers that we put on the base rates for electric and propane, and those are easier to calculate than the usage amounts, because a base rate is a base rate. So
Yeah, the base rate, I mean, whatever is showing in actual, it should generally be very, very little variance in, to budget, right?
That's
and
correct.
the variance would come from the fact we had budgeted for a 3% CPI increase, and our CPI increase was actually only 1.5%. So, you know, it would be, that would be where the variances would come in, would be what we budgeted for the actual rates and what actually came to fruition through the CPI increase.
I see. Okay.
So Kelly, you need to add that to page 45, known budget variances.
Oh, well, the known budget variances in this are through July. Standish, I didn't have the budget variances are through, I'm
I
sorry,
understand June. You mean
Yeah.
June.
So that it will definitely be on the new fiscal year 2020 budget variances sheet.
Good.
Any other questions on July revenues? Okay, moving on to cash flow and this is for fiscal year 2021. I apologize for that heading at the top there. It says fiscal year 2020, but these are the new budget numbers for fiscal year 2021. And you can see that total operating cash for the month of July is right at 3.18 million, which is $123,000 better than planned. And I'll also want to point out that property tax revenue in August, that is basically what I expect to receive somewhat for a final apportionment from Alpine County. I still haven't heard back from them. They were supposed to email me this week so that I could do our confirmation for Alpine County for the audit, but I have not received an email back about what our exact final apportionments will be. So that's around what I expect to receive for final apportionment from Alpine County.
Kelly, have these budget numbers been updated to reflect the fiscal 21 budget?
Yes, this is new. This is all fiscal 21 budget numbers.
Thank you.
Just another question. I should probably know the answer to this, Kelly, but I don't. So let's just say we have a couple $100,000 of property taxes that are not required to bring any of the enterprise departments to zero, to balance those out. And so that cash would then go into departments, well, like wastewater, for example, and water, wastewater. But would that number, when it comes to this cash flow sheet, would that additional number, it would show up originally in the operating cash, and then you and Eric would decide whether or not to move some of that into reserve?
Well, this is, you wouldn't see it so much here. That I mean, that money that we get is already in the cash flow, as this is just the cash.
Oh yeah, I guess
balances.
what I'm wondering is, I guess it's all, all the cash is here, shown here. I understand that. So then it's just a matter of judgment over time as to whether or not to move any into the reserve.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And truly, we're not really using that reserve fund anymore. We're keeping all of our extra cash in the LAIF, because we earn a better interest rate there. So
oh, I see. Oh, so the reserve isn't just a book entry or an accounting entry. It's actually an account someplace.
Yep, we have $439,000 in our reserve account that we had designated reserve, but we're just not, because of the fact we're not earning as good of an interest rate there. We're keeping our extra cash in the LAIF to get that interest.
I see. Okay. Got it.
Any other questions on cash flow? Okay. And so on page 45, the known budget variances, these are just for fiscal year 2020. And the only change that came through was updated the playground budget variance through June 30th.
Okay. I see that some more folks have joined. So from the public, are there any questions on any of these financials that we've gone over?
So I have a question myself. So the variance, you say it's for fiscal year 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So that the one that starts July 1st, 20 to June 30th, 2021?
That's correct.
Yep. No, this is fiscal year ending 2020. This is the one that ends on June 30th, 2020.
Right.
That's what this FYE means, that ending. So
Oh,
last
okay.
fiscal year, not 2021. No.
Ending. Okay.
Ending, sorry.
Ending. Yes.
Next finance meeting, next board meeting, this will be changed to 2021, which will be the current fiscal year.
Yes. Okay.
Because I don't think we've closed out July yet completely, right, Cal?
No.
You know, at some point you're going to ask for committee reports from finance, and you know, we're talking about financials now. At some point during this meeting, Eric Christensen, could you cover what we talked about at our finance committee meeting, COVID financial contingency plan conceptually? In other words, to give an overview of what you gave the finance committee.
I can do that.
Is this the right time, or?
Yeah, I think if you would, I probably, when we get to committee reports, I'll just pull up the finance committee packet that has those different ones, and we can just go over those if that would help. Is that kind of what you're aiming towards?
Yes.
Okay, I can do that. Absolutely. So I'll have that ready to go when we get there.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kelly. We'll go on to item 8B now. This is the health insurance. Eric, why don't you go ahead and cover the CalPERS portion of it?
Sure. Sorry, I was just moving on something else. Okay, I apologize for that. Okay, so we've talked about this for a while, personnel and the board, and what the district's goals were, and I've narrowed them down to 3 basic categories: to be able to adjust retiree medical benefits, to lower our costs by creating a legacy employee or an existing employee and future employees in terms of district contributions, employee contributions, and the ability to lower costs overall. And so with CalPERS, we're not able to adjust our retiree medical benefits. They are what they are in perpetuity. If we stay with CalPERS, they don't allow us to adjust those at this point. That's a fixed $400 and some odd per month. They don't allow 2 tiers of employees, which is classic employees retain their current benefits and new employees would receive a slightly modified one that's better financially for the district. And to lower costs overall. Over the last 10 years, Aqua JPIA has been more cost effective, and you'll see that as we go forward. So for at the July 15th meeting, CalPERS board met and voted to increase the 3. They voted on all the plans, but there's only 3 plans in which the district participates, which are these 3 plans. And you can see the amount of increase. Let me zoom that up, Peter. Does that help?
Okay.
Does that work? Is that good?
Yeah. Yeah, that helps.
Okay. Usually Stanish is the one asking, so, you know, did him a favor. He didn't have to ask me this time. So you can see there's, you know, substantive increases between 7 to 12%. So staff's recommendation and the personnel committee's recommendation is that we adopt the attached resolutions to terminate employee health and board health with CalPERS. This does have to be filed with CalPERS by September 13th. So we could conceivably do it at the next meeting, but it would be very tight. We'd have to get it to them on Sunday, and I don't know how that would work. So this is the meeting to do it. So that's relative to CalPERS. Just to show, it's in the packet. I won't go through all of it, but we do have employees that reside in Amador. That'd be me. We have board members that reside in San Francisco and San Mateo, for example, Alameda. so that you can see what the various plans do in the various areas and how they changed in terms of rates. So let me just skip through this. Okay, let me just skip through this faster somehow. There we go. So these are the resolutions that we have to adopt. This has been reviewed by Best and Krieger, which is our HR health insurance council. They say it is standard language, and CalPERS says it must be adopted exactly like this, but I did run it by council just to make sure, and they said there was no issue with this. So we would cease to, if we adopt these, we would cease to be subject to the act and having health insurance on December 31st with CalPERS. So there's 2 resolutions. This is just their accounting number. It's not supposed to be a real number, in case anyone's wondering why it's 000. That's CalPERS identification. And then the next one is boards, which is 700. Again, we don't have 700 board members. It's just their accounting number, in case there's any questions on that. So we've been working with Aqua JPA, who currently provides the district's vision and dental plans. They also provide health insurance. And so just to go through again, the 3 criteria that the board had previously said were important. They will permit us to adjust our retiree medical benefits to whatever the board desires. And we can, again, create a 2-tier system within that too. Current employees would receive one benefit, future employees would receive another for terms of retirement, mainly centering around Medicare. And that would come back, assuming the board adopts this, that'll come back in an updated employee manual, which personnel has already reviewed. But unless the board adopts these, it's moot. So it's not included in this packet because it's a next step. To lower health insurance contributions, again, they will allow us to have a classic employee versus a new hire employee. They will allow that 2-tier structure. So if we want to change contributions from 100% for employees and dependents to 80-20 or 80 or 90-10 or some variation thereof, or 100% for the employee, and then for dependents we can do that. And to lower costs overall. So they actually just finished their the executive meeting on Friday, and the increases are at 2%. They were going to be between 0 and 2. They actually went to 2. But still, assuming the 2% worst case, the first year savings at the time I submitted this to Aqua, and we've had some employee changes since then, but the estimated savings was $38,000 annually by switching to Aqua JPIA. So staff and the personnel committee recommend that we contract with Aqua JPIA effective January 1st, 2021 for medical benefits. And you can see they did a quick analysis. You can see the differences in plans. So, you know, red is CalPERS is worse, green is CalPERS is better, black is identical. They're pretty similar plans. You can compare the classic to PERS Care and Advantage to PERS Choice. So that's the
I have some concerns, Eric. One of the reasons that the board originally went with CalPERS is because they offered us the PERS Choice option, which allows you as an employee or a board member to get coverage in more than one state. Which does the Aqua JPI offer the same?
Yes,
you're sure of that?
Yes,
that's pretty critical when you're living in this area. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Stupid uses this as well, and then they definitely are as out of state as we are.
Okay.
It's basically goes back to the regions. They would just insure us on the various regions.
And I guess the other thing that bothers me a little bit is that CalPERS won't let you offer a tiered approach, and I'm assuming that's because to avoid litigation with regards to discrimination.
No, they just don't allow that. It's just per their rules.
Okay, so we're not exposing ourselves to any liability.
No,
to being sued.
I can tell you there's 100 districts in California that do it this way.
Okay.
Very common practice, especially it was right after the 2009 housing bubble boom burst. That's when a lot of the districts changed it, including my prior employer. They changed it.
Eric,
Right, so that's,
I'm sorry, Eric, maybe you could comment on, so this is behind the scenes, an improvement in costs. How does it affect employees? Is this visible to employees?
It's almost going to be invisible because they're both Anthem Blue Cross, which is currently what we have. So,
Okay, so
aside from a lower deductible,
a new group number.
Yeah, a new group number, a lower deductible, a higher out of pocket. You know, just these little changes you can see here.
Right.
Aside from those, it's when I switched at Amador Water, I don't know that any employee even really realized any difference at all.
Okay.
So in terms if you're an employee and you've been contributing to your CalPERS retirement, you'll no longer be able to do that, I assume.
No, that's not true at all. Totally not connected at all. Two different things. CalPERS retirement and CalPERS health are not connected.
Okay, because that was the impression I got, that's why they weren't letting us, because we were monkeying around with CalPERS retirement. So no, I guess it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, I retained my CalPERS retirement with no changes when Amador Water switched over to Aqua JPIA. No changes.
Okay, okay, that clears a lot of stuff up for me.
Yeah,
thank you.
I've lived through this, so I'm intimately familiar, unfortunately, with it.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'd like to
Eric Christensen, that was my question. It was the seamless transition in Amador Water?
Yes. Just the new cards was really the biggest thing.
Okay.
And Aqua knows we're coming, so they'll start the process and we'll hit the ground running on January 1st. There's not going to be a lapse in coverage. We'll be ready to go.
So myself, I had also the similar question. I wanted to make sure what would be the impact on the employees versus network and physicians, but looks like it's going to be transparent. And thank you for that answer. And for the tier system, I don't understand exactly what we are trying to achieve here, but I think this is something we'll discuss later.
Yes, it is definitely. We'll definitely have full time to vet it, but just for the benefits, I don't think you were on the board when we discussed this previously. So right now the district provides 100% medical benefits for employees and 100% for dependents. We're one of about 3 districts in California that still do that. It's very unusual. Most districts provide for new employees, I should say, the tiered structure. They provide 100% for the employee and some variation for the dependents, whether it's an 80-20 or a 90-10 split. I've even seen a 75-25 for East Bay Mud, for example. So that's what the tier system means, is just for new hires, we would change the benefit level to something more in line with what's the industry standard in California since about 2009. Does that make sense, Bertrand? You're muted.
I was muted. I was saying yes, thank you.
Okay. I saw you nod your head. I was with you. Thanks, Bertrand.
Okay. I'm wondering if anyone in the public has questions or comments. And I'm assuming nobody's raising a hand.
Seeing none.
Okay, back to the board. So any further questions or comments or discussion before we go on to the resolutions? If not, let's turn our attention to resolution number 2005, which is a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District electing cease to be subject to the Public Employees Medical and Hospital Care Act with respect to a recognized employee organization. So this is what would terminate our relationship with CalPERS as far as health insurance goes as of December 31st of this year. Just a quick little question, Eric. Number 1, should be further resolved, or does CalPERS leave the word resolved off for some reason?
I will check on that and make sure it wasn't a typo when just transferred it over from their document, but I will check on that and and before we send it out for your signature and Peter's signature, I will confirm that.
Okay.
Because I don't know if it's on the second one. See, it's not on the second one either. So
Yeah, I noticed that. So I was just, it's just odd language, but maybe that's what they want.
Well, resolved is in the all caps stuff above it, right?
Yeah, but elects to be ceased to be subject to the act and be it further that coverage. I mean, sort of understand what it means, but anyway, just a little question. Okay, is there a motion to adopt resolution number 20-05?
So moved.
Is there a second to that? I'll second it. By the way, I mean, the Personnel Committee has reviewed this several times and does recommend adoption of these resolutions.
and there is no resolved, Eric. I just checked the email from CalPERS. There is no resolved after that word. So it's exactly the way they sent it to us.
Okay, thanks. So the motion was made by Standish and Rickert seconded that motion. Any further discussion? If not, roll call. Peter?
Rickert,
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
You're muted.
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay, thank you. Now we move on to resolution number 2006, which is a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District electing cease to be subject to the Public Employees Medical and Hospital Care Act with respect to a recognized employee organization, and this has to do with the elected officials, namely us. Do I have a motion to adopt resolution number 2006? Please.
So moved.
Standish moves, Rickert seconds. Roll call.
Rickert,
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay, do we have a resolution going the other way? No, I guess not yet at this point. Right?
No, we would just make a board, just a motion to pursue a contract with Aqua JPA for medical insurance, and then we'll bring back the resolution and the contract, as well as the updated employee handbook at the next board meeting, next personnel, then the next board.
Okay, so the motion should be that KMPUD will pursue a contract with Aqua JPI for medical insurance.
Yes.
Is there a motion? Please. I keep forgetting to say please. Everybody's quiet until I say please.
This is Bob. I move we move forward with Aqua JPA.
Is there a second, please?
I second it.
Okay, motion by Bob, second by Standish. Roll call.
Rickert,
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Thank you. So we're set on that. Let's move on to item 8C, which is a district-wide employee survey. Eric?
So again, personnel's been working on this quite a bit. We did reach out, or I did reach out to quite a few 360 review consultants, and two things came back. One, we were too small for anonymity, and we were too small for the substantive cost to hire a consultant to do it. So what personnel came up with was a district-wide employee survey that would be anonymous. Bob can administer that with great anonymity. People just have a unique ID that no one would know who it corresponds to, and then we can make sure everyone's responded. And then we would aggregate the responses, and then we would review them at personnel. We've gone over the questions, I think about 3 times, and refined and refined and refined. And this is what we came up with. So happy to hear any suggestions or changes or deletions.
Yeah, you know, the comment, one of the last comments I made in personnel, and I don't think this is a big deal because there will only be, I think, 17, at most 17 surveys to look at. But a number of these questions are somewhat open-ended. So it's not like a numeric scale or a yes, no kinds of answers. So it's going to be a matter of looking at the text and trying to glean, meaning from the text rather than from a numeric scale and averages and that kind of thing. So there's going to be some care taken, some time taken to understand what people are saying, if there are any commonalities, if there are any threads of consistency from how people are saying things and so on. So, I think it'll be very interesting.
Eric, I would say that that's a feature, not a deficit. I mean, when we talk about the survey from our customers,
Yeah.
Most of the value was in the comments, not in the numbers.
I agree. Yeah. It's a feature, not a bug. That's what they say.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to point that out. I will say that the original was a bit longer, had a fourth category. I can't remember what it was. And we decided it wasn't necessary. And so, yeah, these 22 questions are what cover the territory that we think we were intending to cover, to understand how employees view their employment at the district. So are there any thoughts from the board members?
Well, I'm happy to use this as is. Was there any discussion on asking them how they feel about their manager?
Well, what we're trying to do is get to that in a more subtle way, because we just don't think people will necessarily be honest about it, even though it's anonymous.
Okay.
We know it's anonymous, but I think people will just be maybe reluctant to say what might be on their mind. So we're trying to get at it with some of these other questions, like, 3 words you use to describe the district's culture. I mean, if it's something like, I hope it's not these, but militaristic, or terms like that, then we might say, yeah, that has to do with how management works or supervisor.
Well, if you said your department's culture,
Okay.
for example.
I think there's some concern that with 2 employees in one department under one supervisor, that would quickly out them.
Yeah. Okay. So my question was whether you had considered it, and the answer is yes.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
That's what I was looking for. Okay. I'm fine. I'm happy.
We want to give employees as much protection as we can. I think that's really the end goal. Is why we did that so broad.
Yeah, I think it does the job.
I have a question or / suggestion. Would a question on the perception of being understaffed or overwhelmed or basically having too much to do or about right amount of work to do or not enough to do, I didn't see that. I mean, maybe I just got that 2 days ago. So I look at it clearly, but I didn't see anything that would reflect basically understaffing or overstaffing and things like that.
We did have a question like that relative to stressed, and I think Eric's comments, and he can speak for himself, but everybody should feel a little stress at work because you're working and trying to be productive. So
yeah,
that remove it.
I mean, we could add under between 20 and between 20 and 21, or after 21, between 21 and 22, we could ask. We could figure out some question with regard to
staffing level.
Staffing.
Yeah.
Because that should feed into some of how people might answer challenging or distribution of work.
And it could be a metric, understaff, about right, overstaff.
Kind of like we did here, Bertrand, with the yes, somewhat no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
yes.
why don't we add a new 22 and 22 becomes 23?
Sure.
Do you think staffing level is
how about is the staffing level, and then just give them the 3 choices?
Yeah, good. Sounds good.
What do we want to use? Adequate or overstaffed, adequate, understaffed? Or what's the word you want to use?
Bertrand, what would you suggest?
I was going understaff, adequate, and overstaff. But
Okay.
I'm happy with others.
Yeah, good.
The only other one that came up later on under culture, we don't have any questions about the board, and I'm wondering if we want to add a question about the employee's perception of the board, if that would
Good
be
idea.
valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, in the sense of,
Is,
does,
you know,
does the board contribute positively to the culture, or however what's interesting is what 3 words would you use to describe the district's culture? And then maybe right after that, you could say, thinking about the district's board of directors, does the board contribute positively to the district's culture? Something like that.
I was thinking of giving the 3 choices, maybe like, do you feel the board is appropriately engaged with stuff? Yes, somewhat, no. Appropriately engaged with the district, or something like that.
I don't know that we'd learn anything from a number. You could ask an open question in considering the board. How could the board better help support the district?
Like that.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that.
Bob.
Yeah.
And then they could say by quit being jerks. I mean, if they don't like it, or right.
Okay, so in considering the board, how could they better help the district and the employees?
Yeah, how could they better support the district and its employees?
Support. Okay, I have captured that, those 2.
Okay.
And we'll add that after 7, right, Eric? Is that what we were thinking?
Yeah, because it has to do with the culture, I think.
Okay. Good.
Well, I think this is a good, we could improve it indefinitely, but I think it's really good the way it is.
Okay, any other comments? Thank you, Bob. Is there anyone in the public that would like to comment? For example, is there any employee who would like to comment on this?
Yeah, hang yourself out there.
Yeah.
Come on, Kel.
We'll randomize your name while you speak. We'll never know who it is.
That's a hard no. I'm gonna abstain.
Okay, then do you want a motion, Eric, to adopt these survey questions, or just get the consensus?
If this is a consensus of the board, these look good, I'm happy to implement them, and Bob will work on it through ComCom.
Yeah, we'll get it done. No problem.
Great.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Bob. Okay, let's move on to the biannual customer survey, an update.
Go to the other one. So we did complete the survey again. I don't know that there was a lot of changes from last year, except for obviously the new questions. But as Bob said, I think the interesting components come out of these comments more than anything else. And Bob and I have talked, and we will be at ComCom. We'll be basically, we're going to have a feature in the newsletter that's going to be the question answer section, and we're going to go through and we're going to pick the questions that maybe are recurrent, have some confusion, like why doesn't the district provide a sledding and tubing mountain, and we could respond to that. But there's a few that we feel we want to respond to. So ComCom is going to go through these and pick out a few, and then we're going to add them to the newsletter as a response. But the one that I thought was important to share with the board that's new is this one. This is quite contrary to the survey we did previously about how many people would participate in the renewable propane offset. We have a pretty high no participation. So that's disappointing. Hopefully we can turn that around with some newsletter articles, and I think we'll talk about that at communications as well. But that was a disappointing new question. But
So what? People said that they would do it when it was a option, but they didn't do it when it cost them money?
Yeah, they said they would do it as a concept, and then they wouldn't do it when there's an actual follow-through required.
Yeah, the comments that I read were really about, I'm not going to pay any more for electricity and propane.
Like that one.
Yeah, and that, by the way, I don't know where this person got the idea that the powerhouse cost $30 million.
These are great ones to answer though in the communications, because if there's a misperception in the community, let's help them understand what the reality is in a very positive, benign manner.
Yeah.
So I think there's one responses like that definitely deserve a response, and we want to make sure it's clear to the whole valley. I did find it interesting that some people, some of the comments where you never tell us about this, but it's been in the newsletter 3 times, but then they say they read the newsletter every month.
Yeah.
Some disconnect there. If you read it, you would see the answer. So it's interesting, but there's definitely a lot for us to be able to do.
Yeah, that kind of thing is just so common in the world of public agencies.
Yeah.
In the world of land use and so on. I never heard of this, even though this was
right.
Neighborhood meetings and public meetings and so on.
Right.
Yeah, and it's our job to deal with it. That meaning that.
Right. No, that's absolutely right. I mean, it's just the way it is, and we need to continue.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing, well, a couple of other comments I have is one in. There were a couple of comments regarding the nature of our communications and how it might improve. And it was from a member. I mean, the person identified him or herself as a member of the communications committee, or at least a committee. I think the communications committee.
No, it was
It was a committee.
A committee.
Yeah.
But in any case, I thought it was very interesting. I mean, I do think that what was being suggested was a bit kind of beyond what we have staff to do. But nevertheless, I think it's the kind of thing that, for example, the communications committee could talk about and say, well, what would it take to do this kind of thing that's being suggested? Because, obviously short little videos of things, a video of the wastewater treatment plant showing what's breaking down, those kinds of things. But again, it's, we only have so much staff and we have a lot of work to do. And the question is how could we accomplish something like that? And I don't want to ignore the idea, because I think the idea is great. The question is how could we possibly follow up with it and go with it in some fashion? And I don't know what that would take, but so this leads to my second.
So maybe we can elicit a volunteer from the community to do a video.
Well, that's the kind of thing which could happen. Exactly. So this leads to my second overall thought, which is there are a number of these things which I think could be taken up by the communications committee at Bob's and Bertrand's discretion. And there may be other things that could be taken up by the planning committee. I'm not sure. And maybe even some by the finance committee. I don't know. But in any case, my question to the board is, other than following up on some items with the newsletter, how should do we need to digest this a little bit more? How do we follow up on the results that we've gotten?
So Eric, my feeling is a fair number of these things are things that exist that just need to be communicated better. And so we should start with those. We know who we can send back out to everyone who, we can't send to everyone who participated, we can send to everyone who we asked participate to say, these were the questions that were raised and these are answers. So we can start with the ones that are relatively straightforward. can this be done? Yes, it can. This is how. And at least take the ones where there are answers and we're just covering it. So we could write that with the original question and the answers and email that to everyone who got the survey the same way. That would be a way of letting them, first of all, we want them to know if you participate in the survey, we want to acknowledge that and thank them. So that is one way of doing it. Then there are the things that are harder, which is, how come my refrigerator costs $180 a month and I'm not even there?
Yeah.
and that one, is we have a very high fixed cost across an incredibly small base.
Right.
That's the simplistic answer. And
Yeah.
we have built to accommodate full build out.
Right.
So there are those things that are harder to explain that we can try to get to over time. But I think initially we should focus on a response back out of taking the questions that are the most straightforward to answer and just do those, and then acknowledge the ones that will take more time to try to deal with. And there's some places where people are suggesting improvements, which will take some implementation, but the things we should consider.
Okay.
So that's the way I think about it. The other thing I wanted to mention is in terms of response rates, we had 141 responses. When we did this in 2018, we had 128 responses, so sort of similar. 2016, we had 182 responses. The other thing in terms of renewables, last year when we asked them whether they thought they might participate, about 40% said yes and 40% said no of the 105 people who responded. So I don't know that it's changed that much from what's in here. And it'll also be interesting if all the HOAs participate.
Right.
And I don't remember, Kelly, if you told me that you saw interest. I forgot, Eric, because we did send the details of what it would cost for an HOA to cover things, but it seemed like
one HOA is planning to participate at this point. That's all I've heard so far.
So a good way to cover this is from the HOAs to their members.
Yeah. Well, I think that, if we could get up to a 1/3 participation, it'd be quite amazing to me. So, I think we just keep moving forward with that program. And
yeah, and there's 20% that say they were not aware of it. So we may get a few more people to join in.
That's right. I'm surprised it was that low.
And it may be that we want to, I don't know, at some point modify the program, not for this year, but, to say, people can participate, but they don't necessarily have to do all of it. I know they can do either electric or propane now, but maybe they could do half of electric. And, I don't know, because I think the big issue for the 40% is probably the cost.
Yeah.
So in any case,
yeah.
My cost was $20, Eric. It's not overwhelming, I don't think.
Yeah, I know. I know.
But I don't have propane either, so.
Yeah. But it's 1 to 3% added cost.
Yeah. No, I understand. I understand. So I just, do we feel like we're resourced to do what Bob has suggested?
I think so, especially with communications committee being so active, and then we can source out if communications decides something should go to finance or planning, they can source it out to them quite easily.
Okay.
So.
Okay, good.
So I think we have a good game plan going forward.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing we should probably do is just compare the numeric things to 2 years ago to say, are we trending up or down?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, well, thank you for all that. Is there any comment? Are there any comments from the public? If you raise your hands, if you'd like to say anything.
In terms of responding to this or communicating it to the public, I think one thing that worked very well in the playground committee with a lot of unstructured comments was a FAQ, frequently asked questions response.
Good point. Yeah, we can do that for sure.
Okay. Okay, are there no hands raised from the public?
I don't see any hands raised now.
Okay. Well, thanks for that conversation. Anything else from the board? Eric, Bob, anybody?
This is Peter. I was a little surprised at how many people expressed a desire for a printed copy of the newsletter, saying that they preferred that.
Yeah.
Do you think we can, I think that's still an effective way to communicate. I know I'm old fashioned, but.
I think there was 3 people out of 140 maybe.
There was only 3?
That's.
I thought it was more than that, but
we'll look at it.
Subjective on my part.
Yeah, well, we do make them available for people to pick up too, if they want to come get them.
Okay.
But yeah.
No one picked them up. We left them out for 6 months and not a single person ever grabbed a newsletter.
Well, it's kind of hard to get into the office these days with the pandemic.
Well, this is before that. This is before that, Peter.
Okay. Okay.
But it only would have been 2 months because we made the switch in February
Okay.
and closed up shop in
But,
March.
you know,
No, we had the
communication-
months of overlap, remember, too.
Yeah.
We had double. We did both for a few months, too.
So the communications committee can look at that and make a recommendation.
Just a comment on my part.
No, yeah, no, I understand. Definitely understand that. Okay, now we move on to the records, item 8E, which is the records retention policy.
So the records retention policy was considered by the communications committee, who recommends approval. Jess compiled this from many of the organizations to which we belong, such as the California Special Districts Association, California Municipal Utilities Association, et cetera, solicited input from other districts, and then also solicited input from district council as to the requirements in terms of the government codes. And that's, when you get to this and you see all these government codes, these all came from district council, as well as other sites, but it was checked. So staff and the communications committee recommends adoption of the retention policy.
Okay. Oh, I just wanted to, if I could just go back to the other previous item, I just wanted to acknowledge Carolyn Tucker's very nice note to the district in response to the survey. Hope everybody saw that, and Eric, I hope you're sharing that with staff too.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to write a thank you to Carolyn as well. A very nice comment. Okay, sorry. So records retention policy, any discussion by the board or questions? And the public? And you answered my one question, which is this was reviewed by council, and because I certainly have no idea what's legal and what's not. Okay, do we have a motion to adopt the records retention policy?
This is Bob. I move we adopt the record retentions policy.
And is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, Standish seconds. Bob makes the motion. Peter, roll call.
Rickert,
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay, thank you. Item F, Rick, performance reporting and aquifer levels.
Unfortunately, Brandy was on vacation this week, and so we were unable to pull that data together. We will have it for operations this month, though. Apologies for that.
Okay. It's good she's on vacation.
Yes, she went to that faraway land known as Truckee.
Oh, wow. Okay, item 8G is playground installation. Eric.
So basically, playground committee met and did reach out. Cheryl did a lot of the legwork and just the yeoman's level of effort, which we appreciate, to try and get clarity from Alpine County as to what we could or could not do. And you saw the email from Doc Johnson and the document which he referenced, item 11 or page 11, that item about playgrounds. And so the playground committee considered this, and we still want to construct because we need to get the footings in. The walkway is done, which is great. The ADA compliant walkway, so we now have a compliant site. But we want to get the footings installed with the detachable bases, use the equipment to set it, and then we're going to produce a video to share with the community and with all our donors of what it looks like, and when we open it, what it will look like. And that's the recommendation, and just not open it to the public this year.
Okay, thank you. Stanish, do you have anything else to add to that from the committee's point of view? Or Bob?
Not really. I think the contractor contribution sounds like it was very successful. Is that correct, Eric? With a K?
It was, yeah, and just I was going to update on playground. Yeah, actually, I can just do it here. Our staff did not feel competent to do the concrete pour of that volume, and so in consultation with Eric, we decided to go ahead and use the contractor that volunteered their time to do all the formwork and rebar to go ahead and do the concrete pour for us, and that was at a cost of $10,000. Of which we would have had to pay for the materials and the pump truck and the all the other equipment. So that was about $5,000. So about $5,000 of it was labor that was unanticipated, but we went ahead and did that based on the surplus that we had in playground.
Yeah, and so big thank you to the volunteer contractors for their work, that's for sure. Will there be a thank you sent out to them, Eric, or has there been?
There will be, and there also will be their name on the plaque.
Sure, yeah. But I think a special thank you would be appropriate from the district.
Yeah. I'll get just on that right away, Monday.
Okay, so yeah, I read the material that was in the packet, the reasoning behind it. And even though I think there was a little bit of conflict in the two documents about whether we could open it or not, it doesn't seem like a wise thing to me either to do, and I certainly would accept the playground committee's recommendation. Any other discussion on this item?
Yeah, is there with the final product, is there a specific kind of soil that we have to add after it's compliant?
We're going to use playground sand, and
okay.
Actually the Turpa sand, which is the most benign sand to use, since our proximity to the creek also meets the requirements of playground sand. We're going to use the more expensive Turpa sand. It kills two birds with one stone.
And are we going to add that next year or this year?
No, we'll add it. We'll add it this year.
Okay.
If you've seen the retaining wall, that's the level to which the sand's going to come up on the inside. So there's a lot of sand to fill. We have some there, but we are going to be importing Turpa sand. But they want to, and rightly so, we want to install the foundations before we have all that sand in there. Otherwise,
sure,
in a hole.
Sure.
So that's why it's not there yet. It'll be one of the very last things they do. And we may consider, depending on the time of year, we may consider deferring the Turpa sand until we actually open it, so we don't have any wash away. But that's
right.
We'll make it a little bit closer.
The concrete work is really professional. It looks really good, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, they did a great job. Great job. The forms are stripped now, so
great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so I guess we just need a consensus on this, Eric?
Yes, I don't. Yeah, that'd be great.
Does anybody disagree with the recommendation? And anyone from the public on this one? Okay, hearing none. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item H, the snow removal pricing. So this is my item. And so I'll just go through the whole thing and then we can discuss the alternative pricing, Bertrand, if you'd like first, and so on. So as you know, I voted against this motion last month. And the reason I voted against it was it just wasn't clear to me how this adjustment was working. I thought I understood how it should work, but I didn't see how it actually was working. And so, and I think I said at the time of the vote that it just was not something I understood, so I couldn't support it at the time. So I continued to try to understand it both by reading through documents, talking to Eric. And I finally came to understand what I think happened and why it didn't make sense to me. And I still don't think it makes sense. In fact, I think it's an error. And in the document, you'll see, I went back to our June 2019 snow removal discussions in the June board packet, and you found this paragraph that clearly said that this adjustment was a result of a 5-year review of data, and the 10% minute reduction from the 3 HOAs would then be reassigned to the total driveway contract amount. So when you look at the contract amounts that were in the last month's packet, as well as what was approved, the minutes were definitely removed from the 3 HOAs, which was agreed upon and as intended. And that resulted in higher percentages for 19 HOAs than they would have otherwise had. But that was as intended too. That's just the arithmetic. But what did not happen was the transfer to driveways. And that can be seen because the dollar amount for the driveways, the contract stays exactly the same. And the HOAs stays pretty much the same, just changes because I think more or less because of rounding. So that, in my view, is an error. And the result is that where those minutes go, if they go anywhere, it goes into 19 HOAs, essentially. I mean, it's not expressed that way, but that's essentially what the math does. It reassigns the cost of those minutes to 19 HOAs that have nothing to do with contract driveways. And that's the error, in my view, and that is the problem. And I think it justifies my vote not to approve what was proposed. So what I do think would be fair at this point is just to say, yes, the 3 HOAs that got the reductions, that was appropriate given the estimate of 10%. That's no argument there at all. However, I think the other 19 HOA, and for some reason, well, I guess for rounding, I'm not sure what it was exactly, might be rounding, I'm not sure what, but out of the 19 HOAs, 8 didn't have any pricing change at all. 11 had pricing changes. But in any case, for the other HOAs, the dollar amount would be as in the column that's unadjusted. I mean, you could go through the math and adjust the total dollar amount for HOAs down by about 4.4% to comport with the minutes reduction, and you'd come up with the same result. But that's where the numbers are. And then at this point, just because it's late in the game, I would not propose changing the driveways at all for this year. And so that's the proposal, Bertrand. The alternative pricing is simply 3 HOAs with the contract driveway stay as approved. The other HOAs are in that column that's unadjusted, and the driveways just stay as approved at this point. And the result of that, the consequence of that is we'll fall some $14,000 shy of revenue as budgeted. So that's what I propose. And so I will, after some discussion, I will be making a motion to rescind our previous approval and then our motion to approve this alternative. So I will now open it up to discussion with the assumption that everybody's read those pages.
Well, I have a question, Eric with a K. On page 50 of the packet, why are 8 HOAs not affected, and why are 11 affected by the change in the denominator?
It's just a function of their percentage of time. It's their lesser amount. So what a 0.1% is just doesn't trigger on their contract amounts.
Because of the rounding.
Yeah.
They stay within the round. So I have a bunch of comments on this thing. So I do agree with Eric's observations that contrarily to what was said and written, the driveway time has not been pushed to the driveway. And I was aware of that, and I didn't bring it forth because we had a consensus that we were not going to revise the methodology this year. We were just going to check things were correct before we could move forward. And the reason I was okay with that is because we are still doing a decent job for the HOA with this formula that we are using now. And so if I take the time after correction for the driveway and compare the percentage of each HOA share of time spent to the actual cost of the last year contract, we have a correlation of 98%. Okay, we can do better and we will do better. We have a number of ideas how we can improve things. And so, but we are actually doing a decent job on the HOA, even without pushing back the driveway time, access time to the driveway. So that was my understanding. If we are going to reopen the snow removable project, I think there's a lot of other things I'd like to talk about that I think are not done properly. We still are struggling. The reason why we're impacted with this project, thing is the way we organize it. It's as it is now, 100% need to be funded by all the HOA. And that means we are all interdependent. And as long as we do that, anytime we do one mistake somewhere, it's going to impact everybody. So I think that's a flaw in the design of things we do, and I have ideas how we could avoid that. But again, we all agreed that we would not change the methodology this year. This is how we did it last year, and we have a decent track record last year, making it acceptable, I think, for next year. So the one thing I would differ in Eric's analysis is, even if you push the time to the driveway, because the percentage of each HOA is going to be changed, they are going to be also changed in the pricing. And independently that, so if what the suggestion of Eric to take the 3-year average as was shown in the package last year before the 10% offset for the 19 HOA is flawed. I mean, if we do that, we are creating problems. So, I understand what Eric's concern is. I think it is within the range of acceptable based on what happened last season. I mean, what the price that each HOA paid versus the time of service they got. And in general, you know, if we start rescinding motion that we pass, first, I think it's our duty as board member to do our due diligence before we vote, not after. And second, it just removes certainty. I mean, the community need to have things set at some point, and we just can't keep revising everything constantly. It also takes a lot of time. So my recommendation is, while I acknowledge Eric's concern, is that we do stick to what we have voted last time and make sure that in the future, we actually address the concern. Actually, we are actually thinking of changing totally how we do driveways. I mean, if we push driveways to HOAs, this is going to be another story anyway. So anyway, that's my point. I think we should stick to what we've done. Yes, there was some incorrect assumption made here, but it's still within the decent correlation between the time span and the price that the HOA paid. So if we don't change the methodology, I assume the same for next year. And I think we should not change the methodology because this is what we agreed to.
Are there other comments?
This is Bob. I like to second Bertrand's comments. I agree with all of them.
Yeah, I think that one thing that's sort of missing in this packet is that a number of our customers watched the video from the last couple of meetings, and to have their prices increased because we did the 10% reduction to the 3 HOAs fails the judgment test. So some of us got those reactions, and I agree with Eric Rickert.
Thank you. Peter, do you have any comments?
Anywhere we can simplify this going forward, I would approve. I think I really don't think at this point we should change it for this year, but consider it for next year. But I really would like to see a more simplified process of assessing for the snow removal.
Okay, so I'll just make one last comment here before I open up to the public, and that is there was a very clear statement a year ago in how this was going to happen. There had never been an adjustment like this. There's a very clear statement about how it was going to happen. To be honest, I thought it had happened last year. And in fact, for whatever reason, it never happened. So it doesn't sit right with me that we are going to state a set of assumptions and then just ignore a key assumption. It just doesn't sit right with me that we can justify it through all kinds of correlations and thises and that's. But the fact is, we said we were going to do something and then we did not do it. And 10 or 11 HOAs are paying the price for that with absolutely zero justification. I don't care how good a correlation is. We said we would do this, we didn't. I did not realize that we had not done it, to be honest. And there was never a consensus from me, that we would do things exactly the same. I thought we were doing it exactly as it was written here, and it was not done. So you may think that that's okay to do, but then there are all kinds of other assumptions we can ignore if all of a sudden we find them inconvenient or difficult to deal with. And I just don't agree with that philosophy. So now I'd like to open up to the public. Is there anyone, if anyone in the public would like to speak, please raise your hands. And Eric will unmute you. Eric, is there anyone? Eric?
I don't think anyone knows how to use the raise your hand function. I see them physically raising their hands. So I'm asking John to unmute himself.
Can you hear me?
There he is.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've been on the East Meadows board for 12 years, and snow removal was kind of a quiet topic, which was interesting because it's such a huge part of each homeowners association's budgets. But over the last 4 years, every annual homeowners meeting, I have to defend a set of numbers that have gone up dramatically, that tend to vary greatly from year to year without straightforward rationale. If you look at prior, let's say 5 years and prior, if we had a big snow year, we'd pay more the next year. If we had a low snow year, we'd pay less. And, you know, people understood that. Now it's, what we see is pretty hotly contested board discussions about the numbers not being curated properly, arguments over the algorithms. And to be honest with you, after the last board meeting, there's not a way I could take this number to the homeowners and defend it. I think it's the process, and it's also the results, which are much more random. And so I'd like to see the adjustment made just to try to maintain some consistency in what we pay as a homeowners association, rather than have these very, very big swings in cost. And then I've been on boards for many, many years. I think the argument to not rescind something because that's going to cause a lack of confidence. Well, there already is a lack of confidence in the snow removal billing. And so to say you're not going to fix something that was an error because you decided it was a proper measurement a couple of weeks ago, I think is a flawed logic. So I think you ought to make it right. I think I could carry forward a message to the homeowners that they might understand at least. But the numbers that were approved last time, I really can't defend with the homeowners.
Okay, thank you, John. Are there any other comments from the public? Eric, do you see anything going on?
I'm looking because some people wave their hand, and so I'm just trying to check.
Okay.
I don't see anyone.
Okay.
The only thing I would just add, just from a standpoint of cost, there's nowhere to lower cost. I mean, we're going to have to do a $36,000 loan this year from electric to snow removal, which at some point we're going to have to pay back, you know, in good faith. We have to do that. So there's nowhere to lose that. So I just want to make it clear that we're not going to be able to reduce costs lower. You know, if we do that, we're going to have to just take another loan from electric. That's the really other option.
Okay, thanks.
I'd like to add on that, that if we change things, the reason I said, you know, I was okay with it is because the correlation between the time spent on each HOA and what they pay is good. However, I do acknowledge the problem, and we are working on it to alleviate it. But what proposed Eric is actually troublesome to me because we are starting 14K in the hole. And so I think if we are going to change things, then we need to do the work and do it and just push it to the homeowner driveway, and it's going to actually impact their cost dramatically, which is already on the increase. So I think actually the rule allocation homeowner and driveway need to be looked at. I have not been able to have that data myself, so I could double check it. But what I'm saying, if we reopen the box, we have to do it fully so that the district is not in the hole to start with.
Okay, well, again, what I'll just say is we said we were going to do something, we didn't do it. We were wrong, we should pay the price. However, so I'm going to go ahead.
Well, Eric, before you do, John Schroeder raised his hand, but he's on mute.
Yeah, I've got just one other comment, which is I'd really like to see staff do the analysis, generate the charges. I'm not comfortable with board members doing staff work in this situation. So I think it's wonderful that people want to donate their time, and a lot of us do that to try to keep Kirkwood a well-run community. But I'd rather see staff do this work and produce it for approval than have board members doing staff work. I think it's one of the things when you watch the way these numbers turn out, it reduces the confidence of the homeowners.
What makes you think the board is generating these numbers?
Well, that's what I just heard, is a board member is going to curate the numbers. He has to have a final look at the
No,
numbers. You
no,
don't trust
we
what
have
staff
used the
is doing,
board to
hire
do
another-
inspections.
You know,
But this,
if you don't agree with what the staff generates, then hire a consultant to do an analysis. But this doesn't seem like a very fair process.
Okay, thanks. So I am now going to make a motion to rescind the motion approved last year to adopt average with 90% policy for HOA snow removal contract pricing for fiscal year 2020 and 21. And if there's a second and it passes, I will propose the alternative motion. So is there a second to that motion?
I second it.
It's been seconded by Standish. Any further discussion? Okay, Peter, roll call, please.
Rickert,
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
no,
Perot,
No,
Thornbrick, abstain.
The motion dies for lack of a majority. I'm sorry about that. Okay, let's then move on to General Manager's report.
Got to remember to unmute myself. So a couple things to report on. I did attend the Aqua virtual conference. I found it to be extraordinarily well done. Definitely something we can learn from. And I've reached out to get some information on how they did it to share with Summer Festival Committee in case things go caca next year as well. So it was really well done. And the way they interwove live and pre-recorded stuff and chat rooms was really impressive. It's a different platform. They did not use Zoom. They used a specific conference-centric platform, but it was really absolutely well done. I learned a heck of a lot. I followed most of the legal tracks and the legislative update track, so very worthwhile for attending. And if they do another virtual one, I will be attending again, as well as probably sending at least a couple staff, because I think there's a lot of tracks I couldn't follow because I was in other chat rooms. And I did end up impromptu presenting on a couple things in those chat rooms because the director of Aqua said, Eric, you know about this. And so we started talking. So it was kind of fun. I really enjoyed it. Good give and take. A lot of up and coming executives, long-term executives, the new executive, Truckee Donner, Ram, who I know from Nevada, went over there. Just great conversation. So really good. I did attend the OGALS training, which is the Office of Grants and Local Services. Thank you, Stanish, for helping me know what that LS stands for. For the $178,000 grant for which we're eligible, there's a 20% match on that of the total project. So it'd be about, if we use the full thing, it'd be about $60,000 the district would have to come up with. Able to find out what we're eligible for, what projects are eligible. We did kick it around a little bit at parks, the park playground subcommittee to talk about that. Few ideas that were kicked around were walking trails across the meadow, bathroom, which seems to have the most traction and interest from Vail's perspective. The legal requirements. So we'll be bringing this back at a future date, but I'd like to see this assigned somewhere so we can dig into what we really want to do and what we want to proceed with. The board will have to pass a resolution at some point that we want to obligate these funds. Or we could defer them and try to have them reassigned to another entity if we wanted, if there was an eligible entity, which in this case would probably be Alpine County would be the only eligible entity to whom we could reassign it. The application package is due December of 2021, not this December, a year from December, so about 15 months from now. That's what I learned on that. I also, the other two, about LAFCO, the other two entities have finally moved forward. They don't meet as frequently as us. Some meet quarterly, some meet semi-annually. Bear has met, Bear Valley has met, and they have approved a resolution based on what the district said we'd be willing to do in terms of cost at a prior meeting. Markleyville PUD will be considering the resolution in September, and I will be bringing it back to the board in September as well. And then we would have all 3 districts supporting special district seats on the LAFCO for Alpine County. That's all I have.
Eric, on the $178,000 grant, the next action that we have to take is to have a resolution that we would like to, that we would, we would be applying, or what do we need to do by December?
The resolution is that we do want to obligate the funds and for our project.
But do we have to, but we don't have to identify a project yet, or do we?
No, nope. The application is due after that, but the resolution is the first step, so they know that people actually want the funds for which they've offered.
Okay, so then we have until the end of 2021 to have a project, to design it, to cost it out, and apply.
Yes.
Okay, and so what's your thought on the timing of figuring out who in the community is interested in helping to ferret out a project?
Yeah, I think we need to at least have the resolution done by this December, would be my recommendation. And then we probably would have about, I'm thinking of a design process, depending on what the project is. It could be very long or very short, depending on the project. So I'd like to have the project sorted out by very early 2021. There's nothing to say we can't work on it now and come to resolution by December 20. I mean, it's very possible that we go down this path. We can't secure the necessary land because there are requirements on the lease duration, 20 years or 30 years, depending on the project size. And if Vail says, no, we're not going to do that, then this whole thing may be moot, and we may just decline to obligate the funds from OGALs. And that's very possible if we can't get a project to spend, you know, $225,000. So I see that as a possibility. Obviously, we don't want to turn away free money, but if we can't come up with a viable project and tick all the boxes of the legalities of the application process, then we should not obligate those funds.
And can we decline the funds in 2021 sometime after we've decided that we can or cannot meet the requirements?
I have that question into them. If we pass the resolution, are we able to pass another resolution relieving the obligation of the funds? And I'm waiting on an answer back from them.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, I guess I would ask at this point, well, I'm not quite sure how to proceed. I guess one of the committees might generate some ideas, or should we appoint an ad hoc committee of interested community members with 1 or 2 board members?
I think we could put this into planning or keep the playground committee going, but this may not be a playground function, so I don't know how you want to proceed on that. Either one.
Well, why don't we ask the planning committee to, I don't know if it's over the next month or the next 2 months, September and October, to see if there's some ideas generated. I know the playground committee, I think they're the source of the restroom. Is that right?
We discussed a variety of options at the playground committee at our last meeting.
Okay, well,
including the walking paths.
I mean, I think those ideas would be interesting too. So maybe the 2 committees, the ad hoc committee and the planning committee, could just generate some ideas just to get the process going, and then we can decide a more permanent way of doing it if there's some ideas that we think are going to pass muster. So Bertrand, can I ask the planning committee to take this up, and Bob and Standish, the playground ad hoc?
Well, I think the playground ad hoc is ready to retire. We already have. The only thing that makes sense to me is the bathroom. I think everything else is so speculative. It's really unlikely to happen, but we could spend a year trying.
Okay.
And then switch.
So,
and I would refuse to do it with Vail's current attitude that they're too busy to bother dealing with the land.
Okay. Okay, so Bertrand, you'll take that to planning committee and
Yes.
see if there's some ideas can be generated?
Yes, I would appreciate if the playground committee forward its finding so we can include them?
Yeah, I think Eric knows what those are.
Yeah, I can share those at our meeting, and I'll forward the OGAL's grant application packet for the next planning committee packet. I'll include that in there. It's not an intuitive document necessarily, so I'll have to explain a lot, I'm sure, but it's a state document, go figure.
Okay.
Okay.
Just one other comment, Eric, which is that Eric Christensen did a good job of reviewing, what he saw as options for using this OGAL's funds based on his meeting with Matt Jones at Vail, and I'm sure Eric Christensen will take the planning committee through that. I think one long shot opportunity, and Bob Epstein alluded to it, is there's this school thing that is at formative stages, and there was some discussion about whether we could donate this grant to a school initiative. I have no idea how to handicap that or spec it or anything like that, but it's just an idea that the planning committee might want to consider.
I actually was able to look into that, Stanish. Thanks for reminding me. I had forgotten on that. So the OGAL's project, school districts are not eligible for the OGAL's project at all. It's for special districts, counties, and cities. Now, if they're a 501c3, that may make it, we'll have to see how that goes. So that may be an option to try and look at that. So, but I was able to run that one down.
Thank you.
Okay, and then one other item, Eric, just a question, and that is how are we doing on the wastewater treatment plant design or pre-design or what's necessary for the application for financing?
Yeah, no, that was, yeah, I'm glad you brought that. That was one of my two remaining items.
Okay, sorry.
So we did have our kickoff meeting with Stantec, our consultant that's going to prepare the preliminary design report. Indications were they thought they could have the report done in 2 months, which is great. We are running the USDA application process concurrent with that, as the design report is probably one of the last things that we give to them. So we've already started setting up meetings with RUS to talk about this and our projects and our application. Stantec's going to get access to applying on our behalf. So there's some forms we have to fill out, et cetera. Consent agreements we have to sign. So I'll be working on that. So we are moving forward with that. Our meeting was on, I think, Wednesday with Stantec. So they wanted to revisit the plant one more time. So they actually did come up, and with proper social distancing and masks and et cetera, they went through the wastewater plant. So we're gonna hit the ground running on that. And I look to have something ready to submit to USDA after finance committee reviews it as we get closer. So October, November. So we're a little bit ahead of our time frame. So I'm pleased with that right now.
Okay, and you had one other item?
One other item. One of our operators decided, water operators decided to pursue a career in firefighting full time. So he will be leaving us effective Monday. And we have been interviewing to replacement for him. We've actually, Rick, you have to correct me on this, 36 applications at this point. And we've interviewed a dozen, and we have 3 very strong candidates right now. And we have 3-4 more interviews next week.
Correct. Wow. Congratulations. That's great. I think we'll miss, it's Spencer, is it? That's leaving?
It is.
We'll miss him. But
he did say he's still going to volunteer every Tuesday, Rick. So hopefully you'll have him and Reba for every Tuesday for on call.
Yes.
Oh, great. Thanks. Okay, Eric, that was it for you?
That was it. Yep. Unless there are any other questions or anything.
Okay, item 10, operations report. Is that deferred, or does Rick want to talk to that?
I can give you a couple of items. One, as you know, staff is really busy this summer. The days are getting shorter and we can feel it. So there's a lot of projects that we're working on. But one in particular is down on Wintergreen and Yarrow. As you know, we're replacing a valve that's non-existent. Actually, we're installing a valve on the line that goes to the Kirkwood Inn, Cross Country Center, corrals, etc. And that way, in the event there's a problem out there, we don't have to actually shut off other customers to isolate that line. The other advantage there is we're also going to install a 2-inch water meter, and we'll take our readings from that location versus the other meter locations across the highway. So you'll see cones, a trench plate out there today. Staff will be out there probably Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday next week doing more excavation work, and just wanted to bring it to your attention. The second item is the Mountain Club transformer.
Rick, before you go on, I've got a question related, and that is, if it weren't for the virus and sort of the general veil attitude about food and beverage, could the inn be operating? I mean, do they have water? Is their water line operating to that side?
Yes, everything's turned on and available.
Okay, thanks.
And the electricity, their line that blew up has also been repaired last winter.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thanks.
Just moving on briefly, the Mountain Club transformer has been installed by electric propane staff, as well as, of course, the Chair 11 transformer. We are awaiting the snowmaking replacement transformer. We're suffering. It's really not us. We're waiting on the vendor to actually transport that piece of equipment to us. And then we're trying to coordinate a crane to remove it off the truck and also take our reserve or fleet of dead transformers from the propane yard. So again, we're supposed to do it this week. It's been pushed back. I'm not sure exactly when that'll happen, but that's another big activity that we want to complete this summer. And then finally, just want to remind everybody, and if you could remind your friends and family in the community, just to be safe out there. As you know, we've got a lot of people in Kirkwood right now, which is a great thing, but unfortunately there was a drowning event at Red Lakes yesterday afternoon, and could have been prevented if the person had just worn a life jacket. And I'm seeing the call volume for July was 16 calls, and a lot of them are related to outdoor activities that we just don't normally, I guess we just don't normally have the volume of people up here, but broken wrists, broken ankles, and miscellaneous type of events. So just again, just remind the community to be safe out there and have fun, but be safe.
Rick, referring to the drowning, was that someone related to Kirkwood or elsewhere, or do you know?
I do not know. It occurred yesterday afternoon. We were called because we have the Zodiac boat. And in fact, they borrowed that boat today to do body recovery, which is
That's really sad.
a grim task. And I can give you details about that event at a later time. But again, a lot of people out here that I just don't normally see.
And then the calls you're getting, the 16, are they from people who are staying in Kirkwood now, or do you know, or are they people who are just coming in for the day, or do you know?
It's both. It's both. It's miscellaneous alarm calls caused by cooking. It's a combination of things, but compared to the last several years, we average 8 or 10 calls in July, and we're almost double that. So
Yeah. Oh.
We are double that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Rick. Thanks for doing a great job on that stuff. Okay, we'll move on to item 11, standing committee reports. Finance, Standish?
Well, in addition to what we discussed, Kelly reviewed the financials. We talked about COVID financial contingency planning, which Eric Christensen will cover now, as well as two aspects of electricity rates, EV charging rates and solar net metering. And finally, wastewater treatment plant financing strategy. Eric, would you like to cover briefly COVID financial planning? And Bob, would you like to comment on electricity rates, EV charging, and solar net metering?
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that.
And Eric Christensen, if you could also just summarize wastewater treatment plant financing strategy.
Sure, I'll start with that because that's probably the easiest. So what we discussed at finance is that we will be pursuing a loan with RUS for the full amount of the remaining projects that are associated with the feasibility study from 2018. We will be rolling that all into one grant application packet. Obviously, we can draw the money as we need. There is a time limit on that, which may mean that the projects are going to go as together in a bit of a bigger bid package, but that was the consensus. So once we pull together the preliminary design report and the application for RUS, that'll be going back to finance for a final blessing and then to the board, again, for final approval of how we submit that. But that was the consensus of the finance committee, which is, I think, reflects the consensus of the board during the budgeting process as well. On COVID, we did look at a few scenarios, and what we did here, you'll see it's called the 10% reduction. What we did is looked at a 10% reduction in revenue for our enterprise funds, as long as a 10% reduction in cost of goods sold relative to electricity and propane. If we produce less, we buy less. So there is an analogy in there. So we use the 10% in those three things. So in those categories. So we reduced all enterprise funds by 10% of revenue and reduced cost of goods sold by 10%, just to see what it did to our cash flow versus our regular cash flow. We looked at a 10% and a 15% and a 20%. I'm confident that staff can pivot on a $500,000 loss on a 10% revenue reduction based on Vail and my discussions with Matt Jones and recent public press releases from Vail. Their intent is to operate at this point, and they've shared their model of what that's going to look like. I'm optimistic they are going to operate. I also, talking with Matt, they're expecting a more linear flow of guests. So instead of weekend spikes, they're expecting a constant flow of guests throughout the week, possibly talking about a reservation system. So with kids maybe not being, my kids are all remote distance learning. So I know they'll be up here skiing a lot during the week, for example. And I know a lot of people are working remotely, so they have the option to ski a Tuesday versus a weekend. So I think Matt's projection of a linear flow of guests is probably accurate. And they're, the one thing we talked about at finance was restaurant revenue. So we definitely, they are talking about outdoor dining in the plaza as a way to make that up. I think we'll see a reduction in commercial utility use from those restaurants, but I think we'll see it made up in residential occupancy. We've seen a huge spike in residents since March, and it's only increased. The people that are in the valley ostensibly year-round now. Many people have, as I've driven around the valley and talked to customers, their intent is to stay here right now throughout the year. We get another 614-inch winter. I'm not sure if they'll still think that, but for now they think that. So it's good for residential revenue. So again, I think this the 10% reduction is probably a likely worst case scenario. We did look at more worst case scenarios, which would necessitate even more drastic measures on the district's part, and which we would have to deal with at that point. Looking at, furloughs, staff furloughs, things like that, layoffs, and that would be our options then if we had to, and start working on a shoestring budget, which we already are. So that's where we were on COVID planning.
Well, I'm glad you looked at it. That's good. Let's see. What were the other items that you wanted to cover?
There's two other items. The only other thing I want to add to the planning scenario is our single biggest cost is our servicing the electric debt. So I think if things were getting worse than 10%, we would try to seek some way to get some sort of relief on those terms. I mean, that's the big leverage, I think, more than anything else. There are two other things that came up. One was a discussion in terms of whether we wanted to offer a separate rate for electric charging. And utilities that do that have a variable cost that they can take advantage of. So, some utilities, their cost of power at night is cheaper than during the day. Our cost of electric is pretty constant, and 53 cents of every kilowatt is the infrastructure cost, and that doesn't go away. So the only thing we really have to play with is the 13-cent cost of operations of an incremental kilowatt. And my feeling is that won't make any difference whether somebody charges or not. So I don't really see any way of providing an electric discount at this point with our current structures. So we don't really see a way of doing that. It was more of a question and a planning purpose than a specific request. So that's where we are on that. The other question that came up is net metering. Now, one of the problems with net metering, the way it's currently designed, is a customer who does that doesn't pay for the grid services. So if you generate extra power during the day and then you need some at night, you're using the grid to balance that out. And that grid costs us 53 cents of distribution cost to move that power around. But a net metering customer in Kirkwood doesn't pay that. So right now we have 6 houses that do it, so it's a relatively minor total. But the question is that if large customers with enough roof space decided to do net metering, and we did it the way it's currently structured for the residences, and if we were required by law to do it that way, that would defer a very large amount of cost to everybody else. So we are concerned that there's some conversation about some of the large buildings possibly considering displacing us with solar, and that would be a very large transfer of costs to other customers, what would cause a rate increase for everybody else. So we're trying to understand what our choices are and deal with that. If the customers are just interested in being renewable, completely renewable, we can do that for pennies for them. If they're interested in leaving our service territory effectively by putting their own power plant on their roof, then that's just a transfer of cost to everybody else. So those were the 2 discussions.
Do you see options, Bob?
Well, it is to everybody. It is if a large building decide to put on solar. Well, one thing is whether we have any legal ability on that regards, and that's one of the things we're trying to understand. If they paid for the actual utility services they used, in other words, when they drew power, they paid at full price, then that would be one thing. But if they're not paying that, then it just means that our rates go up for everybody else.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah, so I don't see, it's one of those things where the overall design of it worked well to sort of as an incentive to get people started. It works really badly in locations where there is very high fixed costs.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a little adjustment to your comment, Bob.
Yeah,
so
I'd be interested in hearing it.
So you said 53 cents for the infrastructure, but the people doing net metering are paying the base fee. So part of, is the base fee actually
the base fee is
helping?
It's very tiny in electricity. And
yeah.
So thank you for mentioning that, because what some of the entities have done is they've made, I mean, if we were going to balance the base fee and made it look more like water and wastewater, then it would be a smaller impact.
Yes.
How that affects, what that would generally tend to do is shift costs from the commercial customers to the residential.
Yes, that's the problem.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
But anyway, I just wanted to make sure people understand pay a base fee, which is going toward infrastructure, but is actually now not sufficient to cover the extra charge. Yes.
The base, that's right. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because the base fee versus the usage charge would be a way of addressing this if there were a major shift.
So clearly, we need to protect the district from commercial or big system development that we don't want to see, that basically the valley is subsidizing them. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a number of things we need to understand better in terms of what our options are, and we need to do a little bit of modeling and then find out how serious the threat is. And that's it from finance.
Okay, that's the Finance Committee. Planning?
Planning. So we had a quick update on the school, but very shortly. There was a survey where about 50 children was tentatively considered to move to in the school if we had one in Kirkwood. That's more on the long term if we could develop something like a ski academy. For this coming year, there is about a dozen children that are going to go up for coaching, tutoring, and extracurriculum activities. So they are working on finding location and organizing themselves. It is a very, there is an COVID-19 is an opportunity for the Valley to get a school back because many people are changing the way they see their second home here. And like we've seen on the Cable's View, there are people moving to stay, which is going to be great for the district because our pricing structure is designed for a specific consumption level. And so if we increase our consumption level, we should actually be able to reduce rate in the future. So,
right.
Which is actually a concern to many people in the Valley, and actually prevent some people coming here as well.
Okay,
So,
may I ask a question? What role do you see the PUD playing as far as the school goes?
Okay, so, I mean, clearly, if the district can be involved in a playground, it could be involved in a school. However,
that's not, Bertrand, that is not clear at all.
Yeah, that's
Not
okay. So I said, however, I don't see I mean, clearly the school system needs to be run by an organization that is fronted by the parents and whoever they hire to do this work. So I don't think the PUD, that's my opinion, but should be the front runner on this project. However, I think the Valley would benefit to have a school, and PUD, VEL, the development of real estate, so all of us would benefit from it. And I think that's where as planning, I'm trying to be supportive. So more trying to make things possible rather than actually leading things, helping finding solutions. And so that so far, I've been participating, not as a direct interested person, but I have listened to see, try to keep track of what's going on and see where the PUD could be a resource or help to make this a reality for the Valley. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, we just have to acknowledge that our state charter has nothing to do with schools.
I agree.
Yeah.
Then we Tesla charging station for electrical vehicle. I understand the deposit has been received by the district and it's in technical planning at this stage. We don't have much more detail on that.
Is that the location along 88, Bertrand?
No, actually the location that is looked at today is the island of snow in winter, which is between the Kirkwood Expedition and the lodge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that land is owned by Kirkwood Valley Development, the real estate, and so they are working with Tesla for possibly getting an electric site there, which would be much, I mean, they're still thinking eventually to do something on 88, but for Kirkwood itself, it'd be much better located near the plaza so people can do things and bar shops and all. Yeah.
Yeah.
wastewater treatment plant public health testing. So this is a kind of complex topic here. In short, so what we try to do at the planning committee is to answer 3 questions. What is available to test for COVID? How we could use it in our local situation, knowing that we have a lot of day skiers. And number 3, what would be the response at the various entity, being VEL and potentially the district, if we had COVID infection in the valley. So we are at the very beginning of it, and that's basically where we are at this stage. There is clearly the concern of the time that people would have to spend for the staff to actually do this kind of work, and so it's still basically a very hypothetical thing that we are looking into it, knowing that this is what planning should do, is to try to be prepared for the future. And I think virus, this one or others, are going to be the norm in the future. So I think we need to start thinking how we can adapt and what are the possibilities. And knowing we are doing a plant upgrade in the coming years, it's a good time to do that. Do anyone have a question on that? No. We discussed how to approach the connection fee review, and still basically that will be subject to discussion in future committees. We discussed about the irrigation incentive program. So several homeowner residents were concerned about the impact of increasing the rate of irrigation to the same level of the drinking water, to what the impact would be on the landscaping and beautification of the valley. And we basically are struggling at this stage trying to find what kind of shape and format such an incentive program would be. So one of the big problems is, besides the fact people pay already a lot for the utilities, to ask them to voluntarily fund. So we think the prospect of that is going to be fairly small base. But the other issue is how to actually use this fund, and who qualify, who don't, which is a lot of work and for also a small base. So one of the things that we discussed was the idea to try to have it done by a separate entities, like a smaller 501c that would actually get donations and distribute it. It's something that would not take as much time for KMPUD. So this is where we are, and we'd love to have feedback from the board on that if people have suggestions. That actually I bridged 2 things together. I'm sorry about that. So how we will do, the next thing is voluntary utility funding. So basically the concept that Eric proposed at the previous board meeting of allowing people to make a small or big donation when they pay their bill, so people could, so people with, I'm thinking of fixed income resident, full-time resident that are struggling with the level of our cost of our utilities, to basically being able to help these people. So, so when I mentioned the 501c for the irrigation, that's a mistake. It's actually for that project that I was thinking of. So I just mixed up myself. And that's basically it. So that's what we talk at the planning committee. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Bertrand. Operations?
We didn't meet in July.
Communication?
Two items. One is we've started the process of doing some changes for the website, which consists of some changes to the menu structure to include, simplify some things, include some things that aren't there before. A number of the committee members look through other utilities websites, and so we've picked together some ideas that we'd like to pursue. So we're gonna start the process of making those changes. What we do is just a series of small changes, no big, no huge projects at this time. The other thing we'll be doing is taking the results from the survey that we completed, and then working on a FAQ response that we go back out that we've talked about. And the only other topic we covered was how to increase online registration. So we gave Eric a very, very ambitious target as part of his thing, and then offered applaud as he achieved it. So, but between that, we need to develop a better plan than just that. So we're going to work on that and try to see if we can't increase online participation. And those are the topics.
Great, thanks. Personnel met, and we have covered the main items in this meeting. Okay, we can move on to the temporary advisory committee reports. Playground, I think we've probably gotten it, but is that Bob or Eric or Standish?
I think we've covered everything.
Summer festival, is that pretty much covered, or does Cheryl want to say anything if she's here still, or Rick?
She's here, shaking her head.
I can give you a quick update. We may have found a vehicle, a type
Okay.
6 vehicle, which is located in Simpleville or Simpsonville, South Carolina. And we're planning to send our mechanic out there for an inspection of the vehicle. It's a $100,000 vehicle, so we want to make sure it's in great shape. So more to be announced on that later, but we're excited to find something so quickly and looking forward to bringing it online before winter. And that's all I have to report right now.
Okay, that's interesting news. And fire funding. I know that Rick and the chief were trying to have some conversations. And Rick or Eric, do you want to say anything about this?
I think we're going to try and get a meeting of the fire funding ad hoc the week after next to discuss where we are in our options.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, this is the time. We'll move on to item 13, general discussion. Opportunity for board members to ask questions for clarification, provide information, come up with subsequent agenda items. Board members, do you have anything? Okay, hearing none, then we'll adjourn this meeting to the next regular meeting. Our next regular meeting will be on September 12th at 8 a.m.
Yeah, great. The only question I just had is a general consensus question under general discussion. Normally we move the December board meeting to a Friday to accommodate the holiday party. I'm unclear that that's going to be feasible at this time. So right for the time being, unless I hear contrary, we'll just keep it on the second Saturday, and if we have to pivot at the last minute, we'll try then. But my guess is Vail Food is not going to be open for that sort of event.
Okay. Okay, as long as we can stay a little flexible, that would be great. Okay, anything else from anybody? Okay, this meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.